Yeah, thank you. Thanks for making this presentation possible too, because a big part of this project for the students academically is to be able to interact with real people who could be stakeholders for the project. So your time this afternoon is important to us too. So thanks for coming out. So what you're going to see, I'll let the students introduce the project to you, but this is what we would call in the architectural profession or in school schematic design. So what the students have done, they've been through some community research, which I'll touch on, but it's an opportunity for them to share a really well fleshed out idea with detail with a client. You know, really tell the story about how the project could be. So none of this stuff is like ready to be built. You know, we hope we're going to build maybe one of these ideas, or maybe more likely it will be like a combination or hybrid of a couple of these things. So don't feel like we're on, I want to say it's The Masked Singer, but it's not. What's the show where everyone's singing, there's like the nasty judges?
The Voice.
The Voice. This isn't The Voice. So we're not asking you to necessarily pick your favorite here, but what we really want to do is we want to have a discussion about what ideas are really important or kind of rising to the surface that you're excited about, and hear your feedback. And so you don't necessarily have to like everything, but we want to hear from you guys what ideas work well for this community, work well for this constituency of people that live in St. John. So that's kind of the process. All right, and I'm going to take notes too. Oh, and so we also have some Post-its laying around with Sharpies. If there's something that, if there's a comment that you want to record, feel free to put on the Post-its, because we'll collect the Post-its and keep them with us. We'll do a short presentation here, and then have some questions and answers. So if you guys want to ask questions about what you're seeing, you don't necessarily have to unload all your comments yet, but we'll kind of go through this process that's going to move more quickly. And then we can go over and talk about the projects in front of, we call them presentation boards, where you have a little bit more time to digest like the floor plan and how the house works, how it might work with the yard. So you have a little bit more time to construct your comments. So this is almost like an architectural critique that we have at school all the time, where sometimes it takes time to figure out like what your reaction is. And so, that's the idea of starting here and moving more quickly, and then we'll move more slowly when you guys have a chance to look at the boards. How many of you only have the hour or two? Let's figure that out. So some of you are really limited to the hour. So
I've about 30 minutes.
Okay. All right. So I'll let the students get started.
Hello, my name is Grant.
I'm Jameson.
We're going to introduce a little bit about our research coming into this phase and kind of understanding how we came to the conclusions that we came to. And then I'm going to hand it over to Jameson and her team to begin the individual designs. So obviously we're talking about an affordable net positive housing design for the community. And so we did a housing analysis that we presented to Carolyn previously, but we just wanted to run through it with you guys briefly before we start the presentations to kind of get your toes wet. So this is just a little bit about the history. We took some time to kind of dive into the history of the town, understand the fabric of the city. We also took some time driving around town and understanding the different structures that are here, the different housing types, things like front yard setbacks, that's important in the design, the different types of construction, the different types of designs, where are the sidewalks, where are the driveways, that kind of thing, so that we could understand how we could design that in our project. We identified that there's 3 major problems in St. John that are related to the affordable housing problem, that are scarcity, the cost and energy of the existing housing, and the quality of the existing housing. So we started to map the vacant lots, houses that are currently for sale, houses that have been sold recently, and starting to kind of understand how it lays out on the map of St. John. We looked at the cost per square foot differences in the houses that were for sale, and we assessed the quality using the information on the GIS system that St. John has to understand what is the current state of or the current condition of the housing that's available. We identified a market that we are trying to design for, and by doing so, we started to identify how many of the homes were in a condition that are sellable or rentable, and what is not. And so with that, we also concluded that 81% of the homes in St. John are below 50% of the assessed quality. So there are 51 vacant lots. Most of the houses were built between 1901 and 1930. And we identified that we're really targeting an age group of about individuals around 25 to 44 that make a median income of around 25 to 50,000, and below the area median income of 47,000.
We took a look at some of the current housing options in St. John for a potential renter or buyer. Obviously, maybe the most expensive option would be a new build. We've got existing houses from the 1920s to the 40s, and we've got a lot of existing houses that are from the 70s to the 80s. So this is a breakdown of how we figured out how much these options would cost. So for a new build, the project cost would be almost $200,000, and with that, you would also have a pretty high energy bill every year. For a 1920s home that's existing, the cost to buy this sort of home is fairly low, $50,000. But then the cost to renovate it could be really high, and then you have an extremely high energy bill. And then to purchase a decent quality home would be about $100,000 with an energy bill that is not really much different from a new build.
So with that, we concluded that there are definitely a shortage of new and affordable housing options. So that's where we started to begin thinking about how we could create a new net positive design. This was a previous project in Indian Mountain, Kansas City that the studio also did, but we're going to go ahead and skip ahead to our first design and talk about how we are solving this problem. So I'll turn it over to Jameson and her routine.
Hi, my name is Catherine Beacon.
I'm Jeremiah Vick. My name is Yuhi.
And
James. So very early on in the semester, the first day of class, we talked about, okay, what is a home, and kind of like, what is the research and the problems behind a house? And one of those problems was creating a house that is equal to a home. What are the qualities that defines a house versus a home? And that was a very common theme at the beginning of the semester.
yes. So with those ideas in our minds, the approach that we took was, how can we design a house through the use of what we're terming as a central social space, and we're going to explain a little bit about what that is.
So we are trying to solve the lack of affordable housing, or the lack of available housing, through creating a central social space within a home. So what is a central social space? This can be a living room, this can be the kitchen, this can be the den. It comes in very different forms and shapes. It's basically just the center of the house where everyone congregates and kind of gathers around. And these two different schemes, and you can kind of see in this diagram, this is the central social space where everything else in the house is surrounded. This can be bedrooms, this can be a kitchen, it kind of depends on the layout of the house. Within our first scheme, we made the living room the central social space. And then in the second scheme, we changed it up and designed around the kitchen as a central social space to see what the differences are in the environment.
Okay, this one is our 3-bedroom design. The area is about 1,000 square feet. The cost is about, the energy cost saving about $424. This is the floor plan of this design. You can see right in the center is the central living space and other private spaces such as bedroom and kitchen and bathrooms. They're arranged around the central living space. This is the site plan and this is the Broadway street. And this is the cross. And this is where you're driving here. And yeah, so you can see in the center is a central living space, and these are the elevation of the building. This one is the section cut of the building, cut right in the middle, and in the center is the central living space, and this is the front porch, and this is the backyard. These two are the rendering of the interior view. Show you how it looks like from the central living space.
This is our second design scheme. It is also centered around the idea of a central social space. The square footage is about 900 square feet. Our cost estimating for this came out at around $116,000. See, and let's see, our energy, the amount of energy this home would produce is about 43 kilowatt hours. Okay, as you can see in the floor, we have, as we said before, our kitchen is in the very center of this house, with the dining room, the living room, bedrooms, and the bathrooms surrounding it. And then we have our front porch on the east, and then we have the back porch on the west. So this elevation right here would correspond with this side of the building, and then the north elevation would correspond to the top of this floor plan. In the section cut, you can see the kitchen right in the middle, and the dining room. You start to see some of the qualities this space would have in real life. These are some of the renderings we did for the central social space. You see the kitchen and the dining room prominently in these two images.
These are just some diagrams comparing the two homes. The circulation is pretty similar on both the homes, and it's just showing this. So like the main walking paths in the home, basically, and then the axes are pretty much the same on both of the homes. And then this is just demonstrating where the main central space is. It's just diagramming it. And then this is our daylighting factor, just showing like how much natural light you're going to get in the home, and where it's going to be coming from. And then this is the site design of where like your main views are, and where your sunlight's going to be coming from. These are just our energy savings. One is the new construction, and this is comparing it to ours. So the new construction, they look very similar, but the numbers on the side are much higher for the new construction than this one, than ours. And this is just showing how much you're going to save. And I think it's like $1,500 per year for the new construction, and it's like $400, right at $400 for the net positive per year for energy costs. And then just to conclude, the main reasoning that through all this, with the central social space, why it's important is because, or at least why we feel it's important in our group, that today, like in terms of our culture, modern culture, a lot of families are kind of getting pulled away from each other because of technology, like kids going and playing video games in their rooms and watching TV in their bedrooms instead of eating in the dining room or the living room. So our thought was that by creating this, we're trying to reconnect the families together so that they, even if their kid is in the bedroom, they can still interact with them and see them and communicate with them much easier by removing the hallway that separates the spaces.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Next group.
Do we want to go straight to the next group?
Yeah, let's go straight to the next group. So one thing I wanted to clarify, so when you're seeing the images of the site, one thing that the students have been exploring is the idea that maybe 2 houses can be built on the site because part of the affordability response for these designs is that they're small. And on a larger lot, your town has a lot of pretty significantly sized lots. Like, what do you do with the rest of that space? So they're kind of showing this as an idea, and we're not totally sure about that. We would like your input about how that might work, but you can kind of see that a house of this size, 2 of them can share that lot quite effectively without the houses feeling too close or and that, I believe that lot was actually formerly 2 parcels. Am I right with that?
We'll touch on that.
Okay.
We have a diagram. So, my name's Gary Urban again.
I'm Evan Ollenberger.
I'm Gautam Nirvana.
Braden Buznitz. And we also have Rebecca Poole in our group who actually couldn't make it this morning, but she was just as much of a part of this project as we were, so she's watching us from home. So our scheme for the first scheme that we did is called the Social Sunroom. The reason that we call it that is because of this large sunroom that we have on the south side that we'll talk about what it does. But it offers a flexible seasonal sun space that expands the amount of natural daylight coming into the living space and also opens the views out to the exterior and while supporting passive solar gains and natural ventilation. So this is the view that you would see from the corner of 8th and Broadway looking towards the house. And this is kind of what Gibson was touching on about how our site is actually the full 120 foot by 120 foot parcel. But to kind of maximize the density of the site, we can re-divide it as it was before it was combined into a single parcel and divide it and actually create 2 living units on the 120 by 120 site. So this is just showing a potential opportunity for 2 designs on that street. This one on the corner being the site plan for the scheme that we're showing first, and how you would have a front porch situation on the front of the house on Broadway Street, similar to a lot of other streets in St. John, and a alley access for parking. So the social sunroom design features, this is the floor plan showing the main entrance there on the right side, how you enter into a very open public space where you'd have dining room, open living, and open kitchen without any walls between any of those spaces, so it feels a lot larger than it actually is, given that it's a very small home. It's 2 bedrooms, 1 bathroom, or 2 bedrooms, 1.5 bath, with a Jack and Jill bath situation, and it's 940 square feet with a 200 square foot sun space that's not, it is insulated, but it's not heated or cooled, and acts as a passive system for the cooler months. And again, the open plan living area with clear story daylighting, which we'll show you in a second, and the covered carport is another feature that we wanted to include, given that we don't have an opportunity to do an enclosed garage, given the constraints of the square footage requirement, but a covered carport can also be very helpful.
So this is a perspective section. You're seeing here this is a 2-bedroom. We are looking from the living room space towards the kitchen and the dining space. And in the front we have a sunroom. And this is our elevation. This is from a Broadway street, and this is from the 8th Avenue.
So the social sunroom, again, as from a diagrammatic level, the public space and the private space are separated so that you can keep the private spaces hidden from the public view. So you can have guests over and not be able to see into the bedrooms and bathroom area. It also opens up into that sun space and kind of extends the amount of living room area that you have. So in the summer you can open up the sun space and it actually acts kind of as a patio for you, extends out from that living room and also offers some nice views out to your yard and to the street.
So this is a living room from in the same space. This is from the another exit we have on the side of the house. This is our sunroom and this is our living room. And this is the front entrance. The front we are seeing the Broadway street. And this is from our front entrance looking towards the kitchen. This is the living space, and at the end we see the kitchen. And this space leads towards our private space, which is kind of visually far from the public space. This is our how we are using our passive strategies in our building. This is the passive system that we are using during the winter. We are using the sun space to heat our building, and this is our daylight analysis. You can see our space, all the private and public space is quite lit throughout the day. And this is.
Okay, so if we look at the energy analysis, kind of like the group before, you compare an average St. John home to this net positive design, you can see the difference between 119 and ours running 15, and then looking at the cost, average cost for St. John average home is about $3,000, and looking at our current scheme, it's running about $455.
So in summary, the project cost would be around $121,000 for this home, which is about $105 per square foot. And with that, we'll transition into the second scheme, which we're calling the Living Lookout. We call it that because it's offering a 3-bedroom design, so it's a little bit more comfortable for a little bit larger family, and 2 bathrooms as well. And so the Living Lookout offers a lot of lighting in the public area that allows you to look out into your yard, look out into your landscape with some very tall glazing. So this is again how it's situated on site. This is the other alternative for where it could be situated on the other parcel. Again, it's 3-bed, 2-bath, a little bit larger at 1,095 square feet. Another area or another plan for open area for the living spaces. So as you can see on the bottom, you would enter again from the right side on Broadway, and you would be able to open up into a very unobstructed area where you have the kitchen, the dining room, and the living room all in the same part of the house. And then on the north side of the house, you have 3 bedrooms, including a master with an ensuite. And both of those would be full bathrooms with the option to have one of them with a tub shower as well. It's got a covered exterior patio, which we're using as an extension of the living space that you can go out and again enjoy on a nice summer afternoon. And again, those large windows in the public space, which we'll show you in this. So, go ahead.
So this is another section perspective which we are looking from the kitchen towards the west direction. The far end you can see the living room that extends towards the backyard, and there's this dining room, and we have a bedroom, and in this separation we have a transition space of cupboard built furnitures. This is our elevation. This is from the air, and this is from the Broadway street. So the strategy in this 3-bedroom we are having is that we are separating public and private space through the horizontal axis. In the previous design, we have the same idea but with a vertical axis. So you see the public space towards the south and the private space towards the north. In this one, we are punching out certain space in our elevation so that we could have the interior and exterior space blend, and so that we have like this visual extension towards our street. This is a perspective from the kitchen and the entrance. You are looking towards the dining and the living space. The big size window towards the south and the west gives you a clear view of a garden and the street. This is from the living room, which we are looking towards the front entrance of the building, and then our kitchen, and then our cupboard, the wall, and the transition space that separates the public and the private space. For the passive strategy for this building, the first thing we are using is cross ventilation, which you can see in this diagram. This is one of the main idea, and another idea is the direct solar gain. In the previous design we had a sunroom. For this one we are using direct solar gain, and this is a daylight analysis which you can see we have clear daylight in all of our living space.
And then, just like the other scheme, you can just comparing the two, an average St. John home, you can see they're still the high numbers, and then this 3-bedroom scheme is actually dropping down to 14, and then the total cost is sitting around 500 for an energy cost, still compared to about 3,000 for a St. John home currently.
And to conclude, for the second scheme, we have an estimated project cost of $125,000, which is a cost per square foot of around $114 a square foot. And I think that's all we have. Thanks.
So to clarify on the energy thing, so when these guys are estimating like $500 a year in energy costs, they're talking about an all-electric house, and that's heating and cooling and lighting and like hot water heating and plugs and stuff like that. So, and the concept of this as a net zero building is that when you bring down the energy use of the house to an amount that's that low, you can more affordably offset that with solar panels. So one thing we really want to have happen with this house is that the solar panels are part of the house from the beginning, instead of something that gets added on later. That they can be built into the house like a built-in appliance, and whoever lives here can benefit from the energy savings of that kind of from day one.
Okay, so we call our house as the fifth space because while interacting with you earlier, we found out that how backyard or like these gathering space were so integral to your social structure. So we have integrated that fifth space into the house for each of these needs.
Okay, so the first off is the 2-bedroom scheme. It's going to have a total cost of about $118,000. So this is going to be 984 square feet. It's going to have 436 square feet of patio space, as well as a paved front yard, about 480 square feet. So you'll have the intersection of Broadway and 8, where this house will be located. So simple diagram of how we came to this concept. We took the simple idea of a gabled structure like most of the houses here. We decided on priority of space, changing that gabled structure to reflect private versus public space. And then we created voids that allowed those patio spaces to really jump out whenever you see this design. So yeah, you see these 3 lighter blue squares represent the different outdoor public spaces that are created through this house. Okay, so you can see more of what we're talking about. So when we were talking people St. John, the 3 things that we heard the most when it came to what spaces do you really use when it comes to family, when it comes to friends? Garage, living room, and then backyard. And we really wanted that to be a very clear circulation whenever you're moving into your house. So you move from the carport all the way down into your living room, and then you kind of a separate space created through that kitchen. It allows it to have its own kind of own identity. You're allowed to have a living room, kind of having maybe people are watching the football game in the living room while other people are cooking. They can sit down, just talk, and have a more quiet space. And then you have the very clearly outdoor space of that patio. And it's all kind of through this division. You also have this connection through a second patio space. It brings in plenty of light, so you're getting in a good amount of lighting without it being directly in your eyes when you're sitting down. And then you also have, we're suggesting some kind of small planting, which will then allow shading during the summertime. during the winter. Then when the leaves fall, you also have plenty of direct light coming in and really warming the space when the time you need it the most.
So, in this section, you can see the connection of the public spaces that we call the living room, the central patio, kitchen, and the backyard patio. And like through the openings over here, all of these are, even though in plan it looks like a division, all of these are like visually connected to each other. This is a view from the living room, looking into the entrance vestibule and the patio and the kitchen and dining area at the back. This is the elevation which would be seen from the 8th Street. And we tried to create like furniture in which like we have alcove kind of space which would be used for seating and as well as for cross ventilation as well. So the passive strategies that we used for this scheme was cross ventilation and solar heat gain, wherein you store the heat into the floor mass during the winter times. These graphs show the energy modeling where typical 1980s house would use 48.3 kWh per square foot, which would cost like $1,500 approximately, but the proposed net positive scheme would just cost $411 annually.
And a good thing to mention now, thanks Professor Gibson, we were able to start talking to a salesman in Hutchinson about solar paneling.
That's what solar installer.
Yes. And so when we talk about, we all kind of precise this $400 to $500 range of the cost annually for energy. But that's not where it stops. It also has that solar paneling. And when you're investing in a house like this, right off the ground, you put that solar paneling into your mortgage. So the numbers they gave us was for a house about this size would be about $9,000. Now with a rebate of $2,700, that's about $6,300 for the full price of the solar paneling. Now, according to this, the installer, you get about annual savings of $630. So in less than 10 years, you're already paying off that mortgage, and usually you're going to be insured for about 20 years worth of service. So after that, you're making money off of having solar paneling, along with this low energy house. And so that savings really does start showing up fast for someone that's investing in a home.
These are our schemes for the daylight modeling, where you can see all the spaces are naturally lit. And this is the structure, like the preliminary structural grid, where our main structural walls would run east-west.
This is the 3-bedroom scheme. It has some similarity with the first scheme that you've seen. For us, it was important the gathering space in the exterior, and trying to make it be a gathering space that's also like a little bit more private. Instead of like just put it in the front, like take it in the back, and then this cost estimate for this one is $130,000. And this house is a little bigger than the other one. It's 1,113 square feet, and the patio area is smaller than the other one. It's 336 in the front yard. And you enter through Broadway as well with the car and by. So in these schemes, we thought it was important to divide some of like the spaces that we're going to be inside, like different groups of area, like the private space for the 3 bedrooms and the bathrooms, and then we prioritized the public space. That's one of the biggest, and to save some money and be more efficient, we also try to connect all the wet area with kitchen and bathroom to keep it in the same place as close as possible. And then with this L shape, you create this the space in the back there's more traffic like covered from of the streets. So this is the plan. So you will enter through Broadway, and you will go out into the entrance, and then you will have the open space that is the kitchen and the living room are together to have more of like a big space instead of dividing it. And then here you can see more of the idea of dividing what is public from the private. And you have the 3 bedrooms, and then one of the master bedroom will have its own bathroom and a bigger closet than the other ones. As you can see, this is a render symbolizing this section. Going inside the main space, the public space of the kitchen and the living room.
This really shows, what it shows is the volume that both the schemes have. The public spaces, which are the living room and the kitchen, will have higher volume, and bedroom would have like lower volume as compared to.
And this one shows when you enter to the house, the living room and the kitchen, the open space.
This is a view of the backyard patio, which is one of the patio spaces. Again, in this, we have used cross ventilation and thermal gain during the winters as our passive strategies, where the total energy cost per year comes down to $450 per year. This is our daylight analysis scheme where most of the habitable spaces have are daylit. Also, we went ahead and thought about what kind of materials we could use since patios are one of the driving features of our design, we thought of having white pine in them, and the rest of the house could have standing seam metal siding.